Judge Marcus Thompson was a man of routine. Every evening he left the courthouse at precisely 5:30 p.m., exchanged polite nods with the security guards, and walked to his car, a sleek black sedan parked in the reserved spot near the entrance. He had earned this position through years of hard work, determination, and an unshakable belief in justice. At 48, Marcus wasn't just a respected judge. He was a pillar of his community, known for his fairness and wisdom. On this particular Friday, Marcus felt weary but content. It had been a long week filled with emotionally charged cases, but he had managed to deliver verdicts that balanced compassion with accountability. As he slid into his car, adjusted the rearview mirror, and turned on the ignition, he allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. His wife, Sarah, would have dinner waiting for him, her famous lasagna, and their teenage daughter, Mia, would likely be sprawled on the couch watching one of her favorite shows. Life was good, even if it came with its share of challenges. Marcus pulled out of the courthouse parking lot and merged onto the busy city streets. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the skyline. Traffic moved steadily, though not without its usual chaos. Honking horns, impatient drivers weaving between lanes, and pedestrians rushing across crosswalks as the lights flickered from green to yellow. Marcus paid little attention to any of it. This drive home was as familiar to him as breathing. As he approached a quieter stretch of road lined with tall oak trees, something unusual caught his eye. A police cruiser sat idly on the shoulder, its flashing blue and red lights reflecting off the surrounding pavement. Marcus slowed down instinctively, ensuring he wasn't speeding or breaking any rules. He glanced at his speedometer. It read 35 mph, well within the limit. Still, the sight of law enforcement always made him cautious. Growing up in a predominantly black neighborhood, he had learned early on how interactions with officers could escalate quickly, no matter who you were. Just as Marcus passed the cruiser, he heard the unmistakable sound of sirens blaring behind him. Confused, he checked his mirrors again. The police car was now directly behind him, its lights flashing more urgently. Marcus frowned. He hadn't run a red light, failed to signal, or committed any other traffic violation that he could recall. What could they possibly want? Reluctantly, he signaled and pulled over to the side of the road. His heart began to race. Not out of guilt, but out of unease. He rolled down his window and waited, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Moments later, a white officer approached his vehicle, his hand resting casually on the holster of his gun. "Good evening, sir," the officer said curtly, shining a flashlight into the car. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Marcus shook his head, keeping his tone calm and measured. "No, officer, I don't." The officer's expression hardened. "This vehicle matches the description of one reported stolen earlier today." "Step out of the car, please." Marcus blinked in disbelief. Stolen. This was his car, a gift from Sarah on their 10th wedding anniversary. How could there be a mix-up like this? He opened his mouth to explain, reaching for his wallet to show his identification when the officer barked, "Keep your hands where I can see them." For the first time in years, Judge Marcus Thompson felt powerless. Here he was, a man sworn to uphold the law, being treated as a criminal. And what shocked him most was the sinking realization that none of his accomplishments, his robes, his gavel, his reputation, mattered in this moment. All the officer saw was a black man behind the wheel of a car that supposedly didn't belong to him. What happened next would test everything Marcus believed about justice, fairness, and the system he had dedicated his life to serving. The crisp evening air carried a chill as Judge Marcus Thompson stepped out of his car, hands raised slightly, above the roof to show compliance. His mind raced with questions. How could this be happening? Why was he being accused of stealing his own vehicle? The officer's flashlight beam danced across Marcus's face, momentarily blinding him. It felt invasive, almost accusatory. "Sir," the officer said sharply, "you need to stay calm and cooperate." "I am cooperating," Marcus replied evenly, though his voice betrayed a hint of frustration. "But I assure you there's been some kind of mistake. This is my car." The officer didn't respond immediately. Instead, he circled the vehicle, slowly, inspecting it from every angle. Marcus watched helplessly, feeling more like a suspect than a citizen trying to clear up a misunderstanding. Finally, the officer returned to stand beside Marcus, his posture rigid and unyielding. "Can I see your license and registration?" the officer demanded. Marcus nodded and carefully reached into his pocket for his wallet. He pulled out his driver's license and handed it over before turning back to retrieve the car's registration from the glove compartment. But even these simple movements seemed to heighten the tension. Each time Marcus moved, the officer shifted slightly, his hand hovering near his holster. When the officer glanced at the ID, his brow furrowed. "Marcus Thompson," he repeated as if testing the name on his tongue. Then, without warning, he asked, "Do you have any proof this car belongs to you?" "Yes," Marcus replied firmly, holding up the registration papers. "Here, you can see that the car is registered under my name." The officer took the document but didn't seem satisfied. He studied it briefly before glancing back at Marcus. "This doesn't mean anything. Anyone can forge paperwork." Marcus clenched his jaw, struggling to maintain his composure. Forging documents? Did the officer truly believe he, a sitting judge, would resort to such tactics? Was this really how people saw him when they looked past his robes and courtroom authority? "Officer," Marcus began, his tone measured yet firm. "I'm Judge Marcus Thompson. I serve at the courthouse downtown. Surely you've heard of me." For a split second, the officer hesitated. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, but it vanished just as quickly. "That doesn't change the fact that we received a report about a stolen black sedan matching this description. Until we confirm your story, I'll need you to come with me to the station." Marcus's stomach sank. Go to the station? Over something so absurd? He wanted to argue, to demand that the officer call someone higher up, but experience told him that escalating things now might only make matters worse. Instead, he nodded stiffly. "Fine, let's resolve this." As the officer led Marcus to the patrol car, another thought struck him. What if this wasn't just a simple mix-up? Could it be possible that someone had deliberately reported his car stolen? The idea unsettled him deeply. Who would do such a thing and why? At the station, Marcus found himself seated in a cold, sterile room while officers processed his information. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the walls. Despite his calm exterior, Marcus couldn't shake the knot tightening in his chest. Every passing minute felt heavier than the last. Eventually, a detective entered the room, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a weary expression. Unlike the arresting officer, this man seemed willing to listen. After reviewing the evidence, including Marcus's credentials and the original theft report, the detective frowned. "It appears there may have been an error," he admitted cautiously. "The description of the stolen car matches yours, but the VIN numbers don't align. Someone must have filed a false report." Relief washed over Marcus, but it was short-lived. If this was indeed a mistake, who stood to gain from framing him? And, more importantly, what did it say about the world he lived in? A world where even a respected judge could find himself unjustly targeted. As the detective prepared to release him, Marcus realized this incident wasn't just about clearing his name. It was about confronting a deeper truth, one that challenged everything he believed about fairness, trust, and the justice system itself. As Judge Marcus Thompson walked out of the police station, the cool night air hit him like a wave. He had been released without charges. Technically, he was free, but the weight of what had just happened lingered heavily on his shoulders. The detective's words echoed in his mind. Someone must have filed a false report. Who would do such a thing, and why target him? Marcus climbed back into his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. His hands trembled slightly, though not from fear. It was anger mixed with frustration. For years he had worked tirelessly to build a reputation as a fair and impartial judge. Yet tonight none of that mattered. In the eyes of the officer who pulled him over, he was nothing more than another black man driving a nice car, a stereotype, too often associated with suspicion. He decided to call Sarah before heading home. She answered on the second ring. her voice warm but tinged with concern. "Marcus, is everything okay? You're later than usual." Taking a deep breath, Marcus explained what had happened. There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment before Sarah spoke. "Are you serious? They thought you stole your own car?" "It gets worse," Marcus admitted, his tone heavy. "I think someone deliberately reported my car stolen. Someone wanted me stopped, maybe even humiliated." Sarah's voice softened. "Do you have any idea who could be behind this?" "No," Marcus replied honestly, "but I intend to find out." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual. As he settled into his chambers, he couldn't shake the events of the previous night. Something about the situation felt calculated, almost personal. Determined to get answers, he reached out to Detective Harris, the same officer who had reviewed his case at the station. Detective Harris agreed to meet him during lunch break. When they sat down together in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, Marcus wasted no time getting to the point. "Detective, I need to know who filed that false report. Do you have any leads?" Harris hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Judge Thompson, these things take time. We're still investigating, but I can tell you one thing: the person used a burner phone to make the call. They didn't leave much of a trail." Marcus frowned. A burner phone meant whoever did this knew how to cover their tracks. But why go through so much trouble? What was the motive? Could it be someone connected to one of my cases? Marcus asked, voicing the thought that had been gnawing at him since last night. Over the years, he had presided over countless trials, some involving high-profile defendants or controversial verdicts. It wasn't impossible that someone harbored resentment toward him. "It's possible," Harris conceded. "If you give us permission, we could review your recent cases for potential suspects, but I'll warn you, it might stir up old tensions." Marcus nodded. "Do whatever you need to do. I won't let this slide." Later that afternoon, Marcus found himself reflecting on one particular case, a highly publicized trial involving a wealthy businessman accused of embezzlement. Marcus had ruled against the defendant, ordering him to pay hefty fines and serve community service. The man, Charles Whitmore, had stormed out of the courtroom vowing revenge. At the time, Marcus dismissed it as empty threats, but now he wondered if Whitmore had followed through. Determined to dig deeper, Marcus requested access to court records and transcripts related to the case. He spent hours poring over documents, searching for anything unusual. That's when he noticed something odd: several anonymous letters sent to the courthouse in the weeks following the trial. Each letter expressed outrage over Marcus's ruling, calling it unjust and accusing him of bias. Though the letters themselves weren't enough to pin the blame on Whitmore, they hinted at a growing animosity toward Marcus. Could Whitmore have orchestrated the false report as part of his vendetta? Or was there someone else pulling the strings? As Marcus closed the file folder and leaned back in his chair, he realized the truth was far more complicated than he initially thought. Whoever had targeted him wasn't just trying to embarrass him. They were testing him. Testing his faith in the justice system he served, and Marcus refused to fail that test. Part 1. 450 words kaleko, or interesting hunachea, or third-person style malikniha, or simple basic Englishka. Don't use any violated word, so please avoid any violated content. The days that followed were a blur of tension and uncertainty for Judge Marcus Thompson. Every phone call, every knock on the door, every glance from a stranger felt like a potential threat. He tried to maintain his composure in public. After all, he was still a judge, and showing weakness wasn't an option. But privately, the weight of the situation gnawed at him. Detective Harris had promised to investigate Victor Lane further, but progress was slow. Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe continued her own inquiries, uncovering bits of information that painted an increasingly troubling picture. It seemed Lane wasn't just working for Whitmore. He also had ties to a shadowy network of individuals who specialized in discrediting people they deemed enemies. Marcus couldn't help but wonder if this was personal, or if he was simply collateral damage in a larger game. One evening, as Marcus sat alone in his study reviewing case files, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. You're playing with fire, Judge. Back off while you still can. His heart raced as he stared at the screen. This wasn't just a warning. It was a direct threat. For a moment, fear gripped him. Was someone watching him right now? Had they been watching him all along? Summoning his courage, Marcus forwarded the message to Detective Harris and Rachel. Within minutes, Rachel called him back. "Marcus, don't delete that text," she instructed firmly. "It's evidence, and whatever you do, don't confront anyone yet. Whoever sent this wants you to panic." "I'm not panicking," Marcus replied, though his voice betrayed a hint of unease. "But I can't sit back and let them control me either," Rachel sighed. "I get it, but rushing into this without a plan will only make things worse. Let me see what I can dig up about the number. In the meantime, stay alert, and avoid being alone if possible." The next morning, Marcus arrived at the courthouse feeling more exposed than ever. As he walked through the marble halls, he noticed whispers among the staff and lawyers. Word of his arrest had spread quickly, and though most people pretended not to stare, Marcus could feel their eyes on him. Some looked sympathetic, others seemed skeptical. The incident had planted seeds of doubt in places where trust should have reigned supreme. During a recess in his morning docket, Marcus received another update from Rachel. She had traced the threatening text to a prepaid SIM card purchased under a fake name, a dead end but not entirely useless. The store clerk who sold the card remembered the buyer, a tall man wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, paying in cash. It wasn't much, but it confirmed one thing. The person behind this was deliberately staying hidden. Later that afternoon, Marcus met briefly with Detective Harris in the courthouse cafeteria. Harris brought grim news. Victor Lane had vanished. His apartment was empty, his car abandoned, and there was no sign of him anywhere. "It's like he knew we were closing in," Harris admitted, frustration evident in his voice. Marcus clenched, his fists beneath the table. "So what happens now?" "We keep looking," Harris said resolutely. "But you need to be careful, Judge. If Lane's involved, then whoever hired him knows we're on to them. They might escalate." Escalate. The word hung heavy in the air between them. Marcus nodded, though dread coiled in his stomach. What did escalation mean? More threats? Another false accusation? Or something far worse? That night, as Marcus drove home, he couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every time he glanced in his rearview mirror, a silver sedan appeared to linger too long behind him. When he turned onto a quieter street, the car turned too. His pulse quickened. Was this paranoia, or was someone really tailing him? Deciding not to take chances, Marcus pulled into a brightly lit gas station and parked near the entrance. The silver sedan slowed down momentarily before speeding away. Marcus exhaled sharply, relief washing over him, but it was short-lived. This wasn't over. Whoever was after him wasn't giving up. As he sat in the safety of the gas station parking lot, Marcus realized the truth. This battle wasn't just about clearing his name anymore. It was about proving that justice could prevail, even when the odds were stacked against it. The next morning, Judge Marcus Thompson woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He couldn't afford to live in fear anymore. If someone wanted to destroy him, they would have to work harder than this, and he intended to fight back every step of the way. As he dressed for the day, his mind raced with possibilities. There had to be a way to turn the tables on whoever was behind this. Rachel called, early, her voice urgent. "Marcus, I think I found something big. Remember those anonymous letters sent after Whitmore's trial? One of them mentioned a name, Victor Lane." Marcus froze. "Are you sure?" "Positive," Rachel replied. "It wasn't obvious at first, but when I cross-referenced it with Lane's known aliases, it matched. Whoever wrote that letter knew about Lane before we did. This changed everything. If Lane's involvement could be traced back to Whitmore through those letters, it might be enough to expose their connection, but how could they prove it? Anonymous letters weren't exactly solid evidence. "I'll take this to Detective Harris," Marcus said firmly. "He needs to know." At the courthouse later that day, Marcus met Harris in his office. The detective listened intently as Marcus explained Rachel's discovery. When he finished, Harris leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples thoughtfully. "This is significant," Harris admitted. "But proving Whitmore authorized Lane's actions will be tricky. We need more than just circumstantial evidence." "What if we set a trap?" Marcus suggested suddenly. The idea had been forming in his mind since last night's close call with the silver sedan. "If Whitmore thinks I'm vulnerable, maybe we can use that against him." Harris raised an eyebrow. "A trap? That's risky business, Judge." "It's our best shot," Marcus insisted. "Let me act as bait. If Rachel leaks false information suggesting I'm planning to reopen Whitmore's case, it might force him to make a move. And if he does, we catch him red-handed." Harris hesitated, clearly uneasy. "I don't like putting you in harm's way, but if we do this carefully, it could work." By evening, Rachel had crafted a convincing story and planted it online, under a pseudonym. She posted on a legal forum claiming that Judge Thompson was reconsidering his ruling in Whitmore's case due to new evidence. It didn't take long for the bait to get noticed. Less than 24 hours later, Marcus received another text, this time from yet another unknown number. "You're making a mistake, Judge. Don't say I didn't warn you." But there was something different about this message. Unlike the previous ones, which had been vague and intimidating, this one carried a tone of desperation. Whoever sent it wasn't just trying to scare Marcus, they were panicking. Rachel traced the new number faster than expected. This time, the buyer hadn't been as careful. Security footage from the store showed a man matching Victor Lane's description purchasing the SIM card. More importantly, the timestamp placed him near Whitmore's office building earlier that week. "It's him," Rachel confirmed over the phone. "Lane's working directly for Whitmore, no doubt about it." Now, armed with this breakthrough, Detective Harris obtained a warrant to search Whitmore's property. What they found shocked everyone. Documents linking Whitmore to multiple schemes aimed at undermining judges and officials who ruled against him. Among them were drafts of anonymous letters and invoices for payments made to Lane. With the evidence mounting, Harris arrested Whitmore late that night. As handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Whitmore sneered at Marcus. "You think this changes anything? People like you always lose in the end." But Marcus stood tall, unfazed. For the first time in weeks, he felt a glimmer of hope, not just for himself, but for the justice system he believed in so deeply. Yet even as the nightmare seemed to unravel, Marcus couldn't shake the lingering question: was this victory final, or merely a temporary reprieve? The arrest of Charles Whitmore sent shockwaves through the community. News outlets picked up the story almost immediately, painting Marcus Thompson not as a victim, but as a resilient figure who had stood firm against corruption. The headlines read like declarations of triumph. "Judge exposes powerful businessman's plot to undermine justice." Yet for Marcus, the victory felt bittersweet. Whitmore's schemes were far-reaching, implicating others in positions of power: lawyers, politicians, even a few rogue police officers. Detective Harris described it as a web of influence and intimidation, one that had operated silently for years. As more details emerged, Marcus couldn't help but wonder how many other judges, lawyers, or innocent citizens had fallen prey to such tactics without ever knowing why. In the days following Whitmore's arrest, Marcus returned to his routine at the courthouse. But things weren't quite the same. Colleagues who once greeted him warmly now seemed distant, unsure whether to congratulate him or question how he'd become entangled in such a scandal. Some whispered behind closed doors, speculating about what Marcus might have done to provoke Whitmore. It was a painful reminder that trust once broken took time to rebuild. At home, Sarah noticed the toll it was taking on him. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, she placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You've been through so much, Marcus. Don't let their doubts define you." Marcus sighed, staring out at the horizon. "It's not just them, Sarah. I keep thinking about all the people who don't have the resources or support to fight back when something like this happens to them. What if I hadn't known Rachel? Or if Harris hadn't believed me, would I still be fighting to clear my name? Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly why your story matters, Marcus. You can use this experience to make things better, for yourself and for others. Her words lingered with him long after their conversation ended. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began advocating for reforms within the justice system. He spoke publicly about the dangers of unchecked power and called for stricter oversight of private investigators like Victor Lane. His speeches resonated deeply, earning praise from activists and ordinary citizens alike. Still, Marcus knew the scars would remain. The late-night texts, the feeling of being followed, the constant fear, it had changed him. But instead of letting those memories haunt him, he chose to channel them into action. He became a voice for accountability, urging lawmakers to create safeguards against similar abuses of power. One afternoon, as Marcus prepared to leave the courthouse, a young woman approached him hesitantly. She introduced herself as Lisa Carter, a law student interning nearby. "Judge Thompson," she said softly, "I just wanted to thank you. Your courage inspired me to pursue justice no matter how hard it gets." Marcus smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of peace. This wasn't just about vindication, it was about leaving a legacy. While the battle had tested him in ways he never imagined, it had also strengthened his resolve to protect the integrity of the system he loved. As he walked to his car that evening, Marcus realized something important. Justice wasn't perfect, and neither was he. But as long as there were people willing to stand up for what was right, even in the face of adversity, there was hope. And sometimes, hope was enough.